Good afternoon. My name is Stanley Atkins II, and I am your National Director of Hemp Farming and Technology with Minorities for Medical Marijuana. Today, you have joined us for Sow the Land. Sow the Land is one of our national programs that is aimed to help be a driving force and resource in the industrial hemp space. Various aspects of our programming include visiting farms, connecting with farmers, resources, suppliers, and finding out and staying up to date with the newest, best, latest, and greatest technology surrounding industrial hemp industry. These monthly events are cultivated to help us get ready for our annual Sow the Land Symposium coming up in July of this year in Atlanta, Georgia. Today's episode is going to feature a special guest, and I really want to get him on because he was one of our speakers from our previous symposium. Today's guest has a really special place in my heart because I've seen him and his brand grow from a seedling to a budding brand. Today we'll be featuring Reggie Reese and the Green Toad Hemp Farm based right here in the South in Metter, Georgia. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about Mr. Reese, and you're going to be pretty surprised at the amount of information that he brings forward to you today. So, Mr. Reese has been a Georgia resident since 1995 and is the first licensed hemp grower and vertically integrated company in the state of Georgia. Reggie Reese is the visionary and founder of the Green Toad Hemp Farm and its affiliates. Reggie is an alumnus of the University of Alabama with an executive education at Harvard Business School, in addition to a stellar career of over 25 years of service as a retail corporate executive, along with logistics, restaurant retail service as an executive at Walmart, Ross, Sears, Shopko, and other great American retailers. Reggie has managed billions in annual revenue and thousands of employees. The knowledge and experience gained in Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 retail provides a significant strategic advantage for the Green Toad and its affiliates. His knowledge of logistics, distribution, branding, product development, personnel development has given him an ability to deliver a farm fresh full line of products to his national and international market. This is an enormous advantage over those producers and distributors who may not have such credentials. His understanding of massive scale allows them to build a plan from start to scratch that is ripe for growth and scale. Reggie has built a stellar reputation across corporate America, personally and professionally, and he never wavers from his core values of integrity and his Christian foundation. Reggie has prepared for this opportunity by working with Georgia Southern University, the University of Georgia, Georgia Tech, Fort Valley State University, and the State Department of Agriculture, along with the U.S. Hemp Authority. As the first licensed farm in the state, It is there was he states as the first licensed hemp farm in the state of Georgia, it is our responsibility to ensure our core values exceed all others and that we build a company that will last for many generations and a company that will produce the absolute best CBD and hemp products on the market second to none. His commitment to excellence is the holy grail of this industry. Without further ado, I'd like you all to meet Mr. Reggie Reese. Reggie, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
Man, I'm doing well. You know, spring is coming, and for a lot of people, they're thinking about spring cleaning and pollen. But you and your team, you guys are gearing up for another successful season of hemp cultivation and product manufacturing in the state. And one of the big reasons I want to have you on today because everyone's starting to see your brand. They've seen you at events, they've seen you speak at conferences, and some people have even tried your products. But I want to bring you on to give people some of the candid information straight from the source. Because since the moment we've met, I've always appreciated how genuine you are, but also your transparency. And like I know, in this industry, it's often hard to find both in the same place. So,
Right.
and so that's why I really had to get you on here today. So, we read your bio. We see that you come from corporate America. You're highly educated, roll tide.
There
So,
you go.
what is one of the things today, as we get ready to get into these questions, what is something that we may not have stated in your bio that you want viewers and attendees to learn about you or to know about you?
Well, the bio really covers a lot, but I would say that, my experience as a corporate guy really helped me a lot. I tell people these companies spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on training. It's like my time, uh, my education at Harvard, Walmart spent that for me to do 13 months, 5 classes, right? All of that helped me prepare for what I decided to tackle right now. And it really put me in helped me really position myself well to understand how to read markets, how to pivot if you need to, depending on how the markets are moving, right? So being part of that corporate train has really helped me understand those moves, which has helped us.
One thing that I've noticed about the cannabis and the hemp space is some of the owners, some of the strategic partners, they come from industries that absolutely have nothing to do with agriculture.
Right.
But I've seen how those skill sets from working in corporate America, working in project management and implementation of strategic plans, I've seen how that really pays dividend in the cannabis industry. So, and in your case in point, we can see how that previous experience has really helped you to elevate your brand and really take things to the next level. So I got some questions we want to get into today. And for all the viewers, if you do have questions, be sure to put them in the chat, whether you're watching on YouTube or if you're on Facebook. Please, if you have questions, put them in the chat because here's an opportunity for you to learn right from the source. So I'll get right into it. So Green, I know, but some viewers may not know, Green Toad Hip Farm has become one of the top growing brands in the southeastern hemp industry. What made you choose the Green Toad as the name, the brand, and the logo?
So when I decided to get into this business, I spent almost a year researching it because, again, being in corporate for many years, I didn't know much about the cannabis side, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
had to learn. So what got me interested in the business was one of the reasons I had to retire out of corporate was I had major spinal reconstruction surgery twice. I had both of my hips replaced. I had these medical conditions that wouldn't allow me to function at my max capacity in corporate. So I decided to retire. I was given all kinds of opioids by my doctors. I mean, when I tell you they had me on morphine and Oxycontin at the same time and a muscle relaxer. And even to this day, I can get prescriptions without question, right? Ultimately,
Wow.
I couldn't stop taking that stuff, man. And
You're
this is
coming in a
something
little
that,
distorted.
right. Oh, okay,
You're
yeah.
cutting out a little bit on us.
Oh, okay. How about now? Can you hear me okay? Live it.
Yeah, that's good. So
Okay.
they had you on these opioids, the morphine, the pills, and we've learned, especially through public education, that they're toxic. They're
That's
killing
right.
us, and they're
That's
debilitating to a lot of people.
that's
And
right.
and so tell us a little bit more because you started cutting out a little bit. So you were
Okay.
taking these medications, and what happened then?
I couldn't stop taking them, right? And that was something that I would never talk about in public, right? Somebody
Mm-hmm.
introduced me to a really good CBD oil out of Colorado, and I started taking that twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. And ultimately, that thing got me off of the opioids and
Oh wow.
started managing my pain and the issues I was having. And from there, I'm like, wait a minute, because I didn't know anything about cannabis. I'm like, what is going on with this particular medicinal thing that they gave me? And
Mm-hmm.
then I went on this tour. I spent about 7, 8 months traveling all over the country. I went to about 5 or 6 states, met with farmers, industry leaders, because at the time Georgia wasn't legal for hemp, and learned all about this. And when I got back, I decided this is what I need to do, because this is something that's not only important for our body, for humans, but for the planet. So then I had to come up with a logo, and I had built this fountain in front of my house, this big water fountain, and it had a 3-foot circular pond and this giant fountain in the middle. And
Mm-hmm.
every night, these toads would come in there and make all this loud noise. And there's nothing I could do to get rid of them. so, so I was
Okay.
like, man, these things are indestructible. It's nothing. I Google stuff and nothing you can do. So between that and then reading up the meaning of what a toad means,
Mm-hmm.
that's how I came up with the toad. And then the H represents hemp, the golden H. And so I
Oh
just put
wow.
those two together. Yes.
Thank
Mm,
you. Thank you so much. And I saw that we had a question. We're going to get to those questions in just a minute. But for a little bit more clarification, the Green Toad specializes in cultivating for CBD. They're not currently for fiber and grain, but we will definitely, revisit that conversation a little bit deeper today.
mm.
So it really does have a meaning. So it's not like you just look for something catchy or what's popular or what's the fad right now. You actually have purpose and meaning behind the name. And I really want to commend you for that because I've
Thank you.
seen some brands that kind of just come up with a name to make that sounds cool or
Right,
whatever is the
right.
popular slang right now. So, given your previous background in corporate retail, what drew your interest to industrial hemp? Like, I know you said you were taking the pills, but what was your driving factor to say, I want to get into this industry in this business?
you know, After the experience I had from him and
Mm-hmm.
how it helped solve my issues, I also seen and knew other people that had the same issues and problems. Family members with medical conditions taking all these medicines that was causing them more problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
People out there suffering from pain. And I knew that from seeing all of that, now I have a solution. I know what the solution is. And once I identified and realized that, I knew I had to do something about it, because I knew if I wasn't part of the solution, then I'm part of the problem. So I wanted to be part of the solution. And for me to do that, I needed to infuse myself full force into the industry.
Wow. I love hearing that. I know you and we've spoken countless times, but I think it's good for people to hear that. You
Mm,
know, when it comes to this industry, if you are not trying to be a part of the solution, then you truly are becoming a part of the problem.
absolutely.
And we need to really drive focus to let people know that this industry is not cut and dry. There
Right.
are legislations and rules that are changing every single day. Every time we go take a step forward, there are governmental entities and different governing bodies that try to push us a step two back. And versus just sitting on the sideline and complaining about what we don't have, what we aren't doing, and what we can't do, you were proactive and really got a foot in the game, you know.
That's
And
right.
I tell people very often, sometimes you got to get off the bench and get in the game.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
if not, then turn off the television. So, how were you and your team able to locate land? How were you guys able to really start your cultivation project prior to actually starting the first season? Like, what were the steps that took to get where you guys were to even get some land and put containers and buildings on there?
So for me, it was faith initially, right? Because Georgia wasn't legal yet. I started the company in July of 2019. And after I came back from my traveling, I decided to do this business. I knew I needed to get some land. So I was searching all over Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
and a realtor found some land in South Georgia and said, "Hey, I think I got a great spot, but it's going fast. So you got to look at it right now." So I was living in Atlanta, and I drove 2.5 hours, went there, seen it, had a couple options, and I had to make a decision that day. And I made a decision, picked the one 17 and a half acres that was really private. The way it was designed was private, and it was really perfect. And the road is on. It's called Kennedy Road, and I say it's ordained because that's kind of short of cannabis. And so I'm like, all this is ordained and working in place, right? So we're
Mm-hmm.
right there off of Kennedy Road, and it ended up being literally the perfect location. I ended up buying that land. It had absolutely nothing but weeds on it. No running water, no electricity, no nothing. I had to build all that out. So I initially did all that myself. And then 5 months later, I started bringing partners in,
Mm-hmm.
limited partners. But I started building it out. I bought tractors, I bought containers, things that I needed to start prepping that land and getting it ready. And then in April of 2020, was the first license for cultivation issued, and it was me. And the state actually, because the pandemic had really just started,
Mm-hmm.
and and so the state really had to do a lot of work to help navigate us that applied to even get through that process because everything was shut down. And so we had to get fingerprinted, background check.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't allowed in the police stations or nothing. So I commend the state for really working with me closely to help make that happen, and got it done, and ended up getting that license in April and start planting in July.
Wow. The pandemic really threw a wrench in a lot of people's cultivation plans because, as you know, the legislative session previously is when we were able to get HB 213 and some of these other bills, HB 324, through the legislation. And a
Right.
lot of people were wondering how is it going to happen? How are we going to get licenses? So it's really good. I think you bring a lot of value to future farmers and current farmers,
Hmm.
given the foundation that you laid even before you started planning. So
Right.
another kudos to you, my brother.
Thank you.
So you got the land, you started building your team around you, you had a vision and you had a plan. So when you first started, how important was you to do your own research surrounding industrial hemp cultivation and also the extraction process?
Oh, absolutely critical, because one of the advantages I had was I had already built a relationship with an extraction company, a processor. So I was going to a bunch of different events that they invited me to participate in, and so I didn't miss any events. I mean, I was all over, not only the state but the country, going to one event after the next, doing the research, learning from various processors. U.S. Hemp Authority, I took a course, 2-day course with them in Nashville, and got a certification through them on understanding the rules and the regulations and the reporting. All of that was so critical, and it paid dividends because once we start growing and you're getting inspected and things like that, it helps you stay in compliance. And we always stayed in compliance, and great compliance, to the point even to today, the state will send somebody, call the state about getting a license, the state will typically refer them to me to get advice on that process.
Wow. And you just said one of the key words that is arguably the most important word in this industry, and that is compliance. And
Yes.
for anyone who may be watching who is not familiar about compliance. Compliance means you are in accordance with the rules and regulations.
Hmm.
There's a lot of farms that have, gone under because of their failure to be in compliance.
Right.
And I really want to say that I think knowing the rules is the biggest part of this game.
Hmm.
So learn the
Hmm.
rules, knowing what you can and can't do, but there's always that gray area.
That's right.
So, all right, you got it. You got the land. You got the plan. You've got everything you need to get started. How did you go about sourcing your genetics? Because I know that there's been a lot of farmers that went belly up because they went
Yes.
out, they purchased the first genetics they could get their hands on, and it
That's
didn't
right.
do so well. Because
That's right.
what people may or may not know is each strain grows different in different climate zones.
That's right.
So just because the late Sioux did great in Kentucky doesn't mean it'll do as well in Georgia. Just because of the Boax did great in Oregon, that may not mean it's going to do the same in Georgia. So tell us a little bit about how you went about sourcing genetics and why was that so important?
See, and that's where the research, doing the research in advance helped us because we learned early on with our relationship with university with UGA, with Dr. Coulong at UGA. He really helped us understand, even in Georgia, genetics that grew well in North Georgia, not going to do well in South Georgia, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all that research that UGA did was instrumental in helping us decide on genetics. And then traveling and meeting growers in other states, southern states, Midwestern states, I linked up with genetics companies and growers like in Tennessee and North Carolina that understood that, and they were licensed to do that, right? So one
Okay.
thing I used to hear all the horror stories when I attend events where people would just buy genetics from anybody, or somebody saying, "Yeah, these are 100% female seeds," and all of that. You hear all those horror stories where people
Mm-hmm.
spent thousands of dollars that they lost because they were bad genetics, or you get genetics from an unlicensed company in like Oregon as an example, and the stuff don't really grow like you want it to, or it goes hot immediately and you have to end up destroying it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
doing that research and making those connections and building those relationships is really what helped us from the beginning, and then sticking to only state licensed genetics companies that's identified by the state as a reliable source to buy your stuff from. That's what we did.
So that ties right back into the research. So if
Hmm.
you're thinking about starting you a hemp farm, you're gonna need seeds or you're gonna need clones. And just because that first person came along and said, "Hey, I got seeds and clones," continue to do your research, do your due diligence.
Hmm.
And Reggie mentioned a term, pop hot. And if you don't know what that means, THC is in hemp, but
Hmm.
the threshold is so low. Can you tell them exactly what pop hot means?
So the definition of hemp in as far as the 2018 bill and 2014 bill or 2018 bill is 0.30. Anything above, as far as THC in that plant, if it exceeds 0.30, the government considers it marijuana at that point, and then they consider it hot at that point, meaning it's illegal, right? So we have to make sure that when we buy genetics, that we know it's good hemp genetics
Mm-hmm.
that we're going to be able to grow. Otherwise, once that plant start flowering, and you're getting those buds and you start testing, then you're pretty much going to have a full field of marijuana out there, because the THC, especially in this South Georgia climate, will grow very fast from the heat and the bugs that could attack it and everything else. Any stress that plant gets is going to grow the THC levels in it.
And that is exactly why testing is so important, everyone. Having you a lab that you're going to be working with, testing early, testing often.
That's
There's
right.
been there's been lots of times where farmers didn't do a lot of testing and they figure, oh, it looks good, it smells good, it's gonna smoke good. But when the state came out in order to, do their testing, they were outside of the required parameters. And
That's
as
right.
he said, that makes it marijuana. And what is your state governing body going to do with marijuana? They're going to destroy it.
That's right.
So
That's right.
keep in line, and that goes back to the genetics. I know I've personally met farmers who were just trying to get their hands on some genetics. They did, and they were about 4 to 5 weeks out from harvest, and their THC percentage was already at 0.25, 0.26.
Right.
And they're panicking because they're like, I still got a long way to go.
That's right.
If I keep going, I'm going to be over. And again, that comes with losses. We're here to grow. We're not here to lose. So
and I'm going to tell you, the state they have a 3-strike rule. So if you are out of compliance 3 times, they suspend your license for 5 years. Ooh. So they have very low tolerance for that. That's why it's so important that you do your research and you buy from a licensed genetics company. You know what you're buying.
Know what you're getting before you get it, everyone.
That's right.
I know everyone's, once you decide to go after this venture, you're excited. You want to get shovels in some dirt. But please, 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 because we've learned that in many cases, farmers are not businessmen. Businessmen are not farmers.
That's right.
Sometimes there is a disconnect. In this case, we just happen to find a businessman who's a farmer.
Yeah. Well, I got lucky because Handy Kennedy Ranch is right around the corner. It's one of the oldest Black family farms in the nation. And they have a 2,000-acre family ranch. They do everything, including hemp. I helped them get their hemp license. And they helped me on the farming side while I helped them on the hemp side and the business side.
Yeah, and I do want to give a big shout out to Mr. Handy Kennedy and HK Farms. I've had the opportunity to go down there and visit, and I can say that the only 2 words that I could think of when we pulled up on the property was, this is farming excellence. I mean, I've never seen a property so massive, so manicured. Everything was in its place. Animals are healthy and well fed. So that was a great trip. And again, that just shows the strength and the power. Once you know how to play the game, that is how you can help other people get into the game, because whether people want to accept it or acknowledge it, we're in this together.
That's right.
We're all in this together. So you've got your genetics. You knew the strains that you want to grow. You know what you're shooting after, your CBD or your CBG. Now, once you did that, once you started from your first season to where we are now, what were some of the obstacles that you and your company had to overcome to really go from plants to actual products? What were some of those pitfalls that you really had to navigate?
Some of the biggest pitfalls was really learning how to grow in this South Georgia climate. The weather changes so much, and you can have mature plants that you're 6-7 weeks away from harvesting, and next thing you know, a hurricane comes through and blow half the plants down, right? Or you get different bugs that attack those plants that we never anticipated on having, that creates problems for you. So I would say one of the biggest obstacles is really managing growing that plant and all the different elements that could hinder that plant from not only maturing or preventing that plant from growing hot. And so over the time we learned, we use all natural because you're not supposed to use pesticides or anything. So very strict about that. And so we learned how to take other bugs that are good to the plant that fights against the bad bugs, so you learn different techniques in this business that helps you, keep your harvest, right? So, dealing with those obstacles that could kill your harvest is huge. And then our first year, we did have 300 plants go hot from, again, we had one source out of Oregon that said they were licensed, and we tried their seeds, and the seeds went hot, and didn't work out because the plants kept going hot. But again, it's those different elements that create barriers and obstacles for you that you really gotta know and understand and be careful with. And then just also understanding that it costs to grow this, right? It's not just putting seed in the ground or plant in the ground. You could be out of 8 to 10, 18,000 an acre, depending on how you do it. just to grow this plant. So, you really have to build out your funding and don't let that become a barrier for you, because that could create obstacles or problems for you when you're trying to grow this plant if you don't have the necessary funding and good growing practices in place.
And I want to make sure everyone heard that. Could you just repeat those figures, how much financially it could potentially cost per acre?
On the low end is 8,000. On the upper end, it could be 18. But if you're doing, massive operation, it could be more. But on the low end is 8,000 an acre. On the high end is 18. That's just planting and harvesting, right? You still gotta have your post-harvest plan in place. That's a whole nother cost. And then the cost when you get it processed and all that, that's a whole nother cost involved there.
So, well, I'm going to keep hitting on this point, everyone. Planning, planning, planning. Plan. Most people, when they develop a plan, in their plan, they plan for everything to go right.
Mm-hmm.
My background in my career, and people ask me how I'm able to uniquely do problem solving. I said I spent 7.5 years as a firefighter paramedic. No one ever calls 911 when things go right.
That's right.
You only need a medic when things went wrong. So I developed an ability to look at things going wrong and plan for things to go wrong. And I've met someone who they decided to buy some acre. They bought a couple acres. They only doing half an acre. They realized they had no source of water. They didn't even think about where they were going to get water. They didn't have a well. There was no natural water source or springs nearby. So these are just some of the other pitfalls that you really need to plan for. Plan for everything. And if you think you plan for everything, plan again, because you missed something.
That's right.
And we've got some questions coming in. And I do want to ask, one of the first ones was, do you have a wholesale program set up for vendors and buyers to procure some of your products to put in their stores?
Yes, we do. As a matter of fact, we have about 15 stores across Georgia that carries our products. Some of them we white label their own brand, and a lot of them they have our brand on it, and we just put manufactured by the Green Toad.
And that's great, because everyone doesn't have the capabilities to cultivate and to vertically integrate themselves. And we're using the term vertical integration. And if you don't know what that means, vertical integration is a business that has everything under their umbrella. There are some farms and some businesses, they only grow. There are some companies that only extract. There are some companies that only do formulations. Green Toad has created the platform for themselves to do everything from seed to shelf. So everything is done in-house, and they do have great pre-rolls, by the way, everyone. So speaking on vertical integration, what made you want to decide to become a vertically integrated business versus just growing it, hoping you can find somebody to process it and sell it, and just hope I just want to sell some plants? What made you say, you know what, I want to take it from the rooter to the tutor?
Right. So part of that was being able to read the market and understand the direction of the market. And what we've seen, we did in Georgia, we were required to do these contracts with processors. The problem is the processors got backed up, didn't have the funding to pay out on contracts to growers. So growers had now all this flour and biomass that they harvested that they can't sell. And then you look around the country, everybody went crazy who got licenses in other states growing all this hemp. And now they have it all sitting in warehouses, which drove down the value and the pricing. So I knew if we're going to drive some revenue, we got to figure out other alternative off ramps for our product. And for me, it was about not just selling biomass in bulk, or selling flower just for smoke, because even that, when you're competing against the marijuana industry, it's a much smaller customer base that you're going to have trying to sell hemp flower at a 0.30 THC, right?
Yes.
So we knew we had to compete against that. And so I knew that understanding some of the other cannabinoids, what we did, we vertically integrated by setting up a process of infusion. So now we're able to take Delta 8 THC and reinfuse it and infuse it in the regular hemp flower and make it stronger to be able to compete with the marijuana industry and do it with Delta 10 and other cannabinoids. We're able to reinfuse terpenes back into the flower to give it that really good nose that people love when they decide to smoke it.
Yes.
And then we wanted to be able to make our own products in-house to not only reduce our costs, but to eliminate the middleman, so that when we create our own product line, we're going to be able to make huge margins on that, and we're going to have another way to drive revenue. So now that enables us to create a wholesale program, that enables us to open retail stores, and enable us to have our online website with our products. So doing that vertical integration literally enable us to create those roadways to revenue, where very few of the other farmers had that. Very few of them. They ended up being stuck and not able to really sell their biomass because they had no other way to do it.
Wow. And I really think that that's one of the things that sets Green Toad Hemp aside from everyone else. And I'm not just saying this just to promote him because he may be a friend or an associate of mine. Oh, no. I'm very transparent in my role. And Green Toad Hemp has really carved out a chunk of the market. And that enables other people to build their brands. So not only are they growing the Hemp Toad brand, but the Green Toad brand, they're also able to grow other people's brands. And you mentioned a term called white labeling. So if we have somebody that's watching this like, white labeling, what are they talking about? Off-white clothes? No. What is white labeling? And please explain a little bit of the purpose and the process of what is white labeling for distribution.
So what we've done is there's companies across the country that white label, but it's very costly, right? So if the average person want to start their own CBD line, whether it's 2 products, 10 products, whatever that is, and they go to some of these other companies, you're going to have to give them upfront about $10,000, and then your markup, your cost that they're going to charge you is still going to be kind of high compared to getting it from a Georgia grown and a Georgia farmer. So we decided we wanted to create a branding or white labeling program that will allow the average person that wants to create their own product line, will make it affordable, and they get to buy direct from the farmer in Georgia. So this just really allows anybody that's interested in getting into the business, they should start small. I recommend it, 1 or 2 products, but we can handle that for you. We have all the stuff you need. All you do is come up with your logo, design your logo, and we can actually work with you on that and select the items that you want to push out there, and we create those products, and they get promoted under your brand. You can create your own website or social media promotional site or whatever you do, but this is a means for you to create your own brand and allow you to get into this industry.
And I hope viewers, listeners, participants really take heed and understand that process. You may be watching today or listening along with us today saying, I want to start my own brand, but I don't know how to farm. I don't have any land. This can really actually help you cut out that part and get to the retail part, because for a lot of people entering this industry, they don't want their boots in the dirt. They don't want to deal with the gnats, the flies, the mosquitoes. They just want the CBD. And so if that is your avenue, Green Toad has a unique ability to make those products for you. Your labels, your packaging, it'll just be processed by them. And this is how you can truly go ahead and set your benchmarks for what you want to do with your brand. I'm actually working on things right now with my brand because it's time to really push out the product line. And I do look forward to having a conversation with you about collaborating with Green Toad. It's not just a product, it's not just a brand, but it's also a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. I have seen the Green Toad team really work. I have seen them expand, and I've tried their products. You remember at the Hemp Festival last fall, people went crazy over y'all stuff. There was a lot of vendors out there, right. And I'm not going to say any vendor was better than the other one, but I stood back and watched the line at the Hemp Toad table.
That's right.
The Green Toad table, and people wanted those pre-rolls. I suffer from anxiety. So I like your pre-rolls. And like he said, introducing those terpenes, having that nose and that taste, that truly just helps out the entire process. And again, I just want to commend you, brother, for the way you're going about this, the professionalism that you're bringing to the table, but also the validity that, yes, we do have Black owned and operated, vertically integrated companies down here in the South. You don't have to go out west. You don't have to go to Colorado. You can find them right here in the South. And now, just look south to Metter, Georgia.
That's right.
And I have one more question. Where can attendees, where can viewers learn more, or where can they even see your products and shop with you guys? What's the easiest way for someone who may not be able to leave the house, or someone in another state? What's the best way for them to learn more about your products that you offer and even make a purchase?
So they can go on our website, thegreentoadhemp.com. We have a big portion of our products on the website. They can actually order on the website, and we ship direct to home. Or you can visit our Metter location at 702 Southwest Broad Street in Metter. We do have a satellite location in Atlanta in the Pittsburgh neighborhood at 825 McDaniel Street, right there in downtown Atlanta, right near the Georgia State University Stadium in the Flores Plaza. And they could come and visit there. The other thing is we invested in a bunch of equipment out of China, so we do high volume gummy manufacture, which you probably know, edibles is probably one of the fastest growing areas in this industry. So we have the capabilities to make through our machines 30,000 gummies a day. And so we're really going after that business too. So anybody getting into this industry, gummies is the thing that edibles, gummies, lollipops, hard chocolates, all that is where, you can make some really great income.
And before we get out of here, I see we have one last question from Jean Talleyrand. And they said, how often do you lab test your flowers during the growth cycle, and do you include terpene testing in that testing?
So once your plants get to a certain point, you're going to have to shift to weekly testing, and it could get expensive, right? But you need to know where your plants are at before the state comes out. So we, at some point, we'll go to weekly testing. That's typically if we're about 6-7 weeks before harvesting, we'll start weekly testing. And then the lab, SJ Labs that we use out of Macon, the way their process is set up, they will let you know if you need to have a harvest plan right now and contact the state to come out and test. So depending on where your numbers come in at, they're going to let us know, hey, you can't wait any longer. Call the state, have them come out. State will come out, do their test, and hopefully give us a thumbs up to harvest. And as far as the terpene testing, we do that, but mostly on the stuff we grow indoor, because indoor growers for the smokables, outdoors pretty much for everything else.
All right. Thank you so much. And Jean Talleyrand, I really hope that answers your questions. So we're getting ready to wrap up. Where can they find you? How can people follow you? And how can they reach out to you? Make sure you drop your social medias and let them know how they can follow and stay up to date with Green Toad.
So go to the Green Toad Hemp Farm official on Instagram. Then there's a Green Toad Metter on Instagram you can follow. And then there's Hemp King 2021 you can follow on Instagram. And then on Facebook, there's the Green Toad Cultivation Farm on Facebook that you can follow as well.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Reese. It has been nothing short of a pleasure. I always enjoy our dialogue. One thing about it, I tell people I've seen them go from seedlings this big to presenting at conferences. And I remember those days of coming down there and fighting off all the gnats.
Right. That's right.
Seeing how you guys, until y'all had everything up and running, having to go in and physically water those seedlings, every hour, every 45 minutes. People, they may not even understand the concept of having to hand water the beginning smaller fields. I was down there a few days after you guys had just tilled.
That's
So
right.
to see
That's
you
right.
go from those seedlings to where you are today, I want to say that we're very proud of you, my brother. And I definitely want to get you to come back out to our symposium this year.
Okay.
And as I stated to you, I'm planning a hemp field trip. So if anyone is looking, if you're local, we're going to put together probably a Saturday. What day would be best?
Saturday is good. Yep.
Yeah, we'll plan a Saturday. I'll get a passenger van and we'll go down and take a trip. It's easy for us to talk about it on camera, but sometimes you may need to actually get out, see it, and feel the heat.
That's
So
right.
thank you
That's right.
again, brother. And I do see they say looking for a rural land. Yes, road trip. They're looking for a rural land for vertical investments and ship products. Yes, they do ship, and you do want to find your land. So
That's right.
those are all must have. So thank you, Mr. Reggie. And before we get out of here, I want to make a few announcements. So thank you all for tuning in to Sow the Land, presented by M for M and hosted by yours truly, the Canamedic. We have on March 24th, we have another episode of Canna Talk with Roz. That is a great show, and it always brings out some fire information with our founder and president, Ms. Roz McCarthy. Next Saturday on 325, we have Health is Wellness with our National Program Director, Ms. Nicole Buffon. You will be able to see us at NOCO, and that is coming up at the end of this month. NOCO is going to be held in Colorado Springs. The dates for that are March 29th through the 31st. So if you're able, please be sure to check out NOCO and make sure you set your calendars, set your agenda. If you can make it, join us in Washington, D.C. in April. It is going to be April, I think it's 18th through the 20th for our Minorities for Medical Marijuana National Lobbying Days. So thank you all for joining in. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe to Minorities for Medical Marijuana on our various platforms. Be sure to visit our website, www.m4mmunited.org. I'm sorry, minorities-for-medical-marijuana.org, and look at our national programming. We've got programs coming to a city and a state near you. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, concerns, or comments. And again, thank you for attending this month's episode of Sow the Land, brought to you by Minorities for Medical Marijuana. See you next month.